Okay, so here are your instructions for making a 9 by 12 inch book with 9 8.5 by 11 inch pages. So we start off with your 8.5 by 11 pages, and it's really important that you leave a little gap between them before you tape them. So you'll see here I'm measuring about the width of a nickel, which is a little over a 1/16 of an inch. And you want to have a nice gap between them or they will bind. So you need a little gap. Once you get the tape on there, just trim it as flush as you can with the top and bottom of the pages. Flip the page over. Make sure you've got that little gap at the back edge, and then just continue to add the pages in a similar fashion. Make sure they're lined up nice and straight along the bottom and the top, and that gap is really even. You may have to reposition it. You'll notice I'm holding it down with my left arm to make it easier to apply that tape. Covering the tape will be pieces of paper, and these are all marked off at 1 inch and a 1/16. You'll need 8 of them, and that piece of 8.5 by 11 paper will yield exactly 8. So if you mark them at 1 inch and 1/16, 2 and 2/16, 3 and 3/16, 4 and 4/16, all the way across, you'll end up with 8 even strips that are 1 inch and a 1/16. And these are going to serve to both cover up the masking tape where your seams are, and to reinforce what is not a very durable material. That masking tape will give way after a while. So one thing I like to do is to make life a whole lot easier. I lay the ruler right on the center of each strip and press really hard with a ballpoint pen to create a little groove that makes it very easy to fold the strip. And you'll want to fold all of them. Now when it comes to actually applying them, you'll notice that I am using a device called a folder, but you can use your fingernail. On your folded strips, you're going to want to put a really good thick coat of glue stick on one side, and then apply it, and then put a really good coat of glue stick on the other half before you press it down into place. Now this is really critical. You want to get your fingers up in there and press it down into the corner where the two pages meet, and then just repeatedly run your fingers over it to squish it down into place. Fold the cover back over and make it a nice flat seam. If you pre-fold the paper, you won't need to do what I'm doing there. Again, a really nice coat of glue stick just on one side. Kind of get it into place, push it into the corner. You'll be able to feel when it's in the right place, and then apply glue to the other side of that strip. You can see I'm going back and forth, a nice thick coat, and again, close, press, and repeat. Now, we've got this really sticky edge on the outside edge of your pages, and I'm going to put some tape upside down on the cutting mat, sticky side up, and I'm just going to lay the stack of pages there on that piece of tape. Trim the ends off, and do not squeeze the pages together too tight or it will bind along the back. You want to just kind of put light pressure there to close that piece of tape around the spine. Next, we're making a bigger cover that will go around that piece of tape that you just put on. And I'm measuring the spine. Mine is now about a half an inch. And so I'm going to add about an inch to either side of that, so about 2.5 inches. So if you have the thickness of your spine plus another inch plus another inch, then that gives you a pretty reasonable width of what will become this spine cover. So I'm drawing out where the spine will actually go, and again I press pretty hard so I can fold that along the crease. And we're just going to want to put glue on those outer two sections, not along that center section. We don't want it to actually glue itself to the spine. We want to glue on the front cover and the back cover, but we don't want it to bind along the spine because it will interfere with the opening. So I'm drawing where you want to avoid putting glue there. So I'm trying to keep the glue just up to that line. Putting a nice coating of glue on it. Pressing firmly. And now you're really going to want to just put this aside and let it dry. The glue does not appear to hold tight initially, but it will. You've got to just give it time. And this is the same thing with the same kind of idea with a thicker book. I'm just using a piece of the paper from the top layer of cardboard and doing the same thing with a thicker book. Again, you do not want to put glue along the very center of that piece, or that will adhere itself to the spine, and you want that to be able to flex and give as you open the book. You want to use plenty of this glue stick. It dries and holds well, but it does take longer than you think to actually fully dry. Okay, the cover actually consists of 3 pieces. First thing you want to do is cut your cardboard pieces down to 9 by 12 inches, and that will, those 2 pieces will become the front cover and the back cover. But then you're going to need a third piece called the spline. The spline is going to be determined by the thickness of your pages. So in this case, I've got a 1/2 inch thick spline, but I'm going to need to add 1/8 of an inch and another 1/8 of an inch. So measure the thickness of your pages and then add 1/4 inch overall. Then make a strip that is the thickness of your pages plus 1/4 inch. That's what I'm doing here. That's going to be the piece that goes in between the 2 covers. Here's a thicker book. It was 1.25 inches. So I added 1/4 inch overall. That's 1.5 inches, and that's going to be the thickness of the spline piece for that thicker book. But whatever you use, you just want to make sure you measure the thickness of your book without it being compressed and add 1/4 inch to get that spline piece. Now, putting the spline piece together is a little tricky. You're going to lay it all out, and the taping in assembly is a little tricky. So you're going to put the tape on one piece of the cover and then flip it over so that you can work that spline right up to the edge of the cover. But you'll see I'm kind of standing it up on its edge and then folding the tape over, the spline actually overlaps the end of the side of the cover. Now it kind of flattens out when you put it back on the table, but you'll get this when you actually do it. And then you're going to want to kind of lightly put a piece of tape there on the inside and fold it up again, trying to make sure that the spline is on the back edge of the covers. Doing the same process here, you'll notice I kind of drop it down over the edge and then flip the tape up to tape that whole thing together. That's really hard to describe, and I apologize, but hopefully you can tell what you're looking at there. That back spine is actually dropped down a little bit behind the covers. Let's see if you can see it. Probably not. Oh well. We'll do our best. Now the cover material is going to go on before the actual book is permanently installed into the cover, because the cover material covers not only the front of the book, but it has to wrap around over the edges and come in about 2 inches or so onto the inside of the cover. You'll see what I mean here. I've got an oversized piece of paper. What I'm doing here is trimming off the corners. And what you want to do is just cut at an angle, about a 45-degree angle there, more or less. But the critical thing here is your line, your cut, should be back about 1/4 of an inch from those corners. You don't want to cut right up to the corner, or the corner of your cover will poke through when you fold these up. Now I'm just doing this temporarily to show you how it works. I'm folding these edges over and just adding some tape temporarily to hold it in place to kind of show you how it works. We are actually going to be using some spray adhesive or some other kind of material to secure really nice and flat and tight that cover material to your actual cover. But this is just kind of showing you the basics of how it works. Once we get it all custom sized, we can remove that tape and add some kind of adhesive so that the paper really hugs it tight. Now the book itself will be glued right there into the center, and then these will just be cover pages to cover up your folds on the insides of the covers, and we'll take it from there. Wow, hope you enjoyed my video.